officially began as a program in 1994, but a lot of the philosophical values were being built in the late 80s. With the beginning was really when we looked at the group home and saw that the group home really wasn't making much sense for people. There were 8 people that lived in the institution, which was in our case Laconia State School, and they had to be placed back into the community because the institution was being shrunk down. And the way New Hampshire did it was if you were born in a particular area or region of the state, then you were to return to that area. So 8 people were selected and transitioned to this home from the institution. And one of the transitions that I remember really vividly was an individual was told that they were going for a ride in the country, but they were taken to the home in a green car, and with all their belongings in garbage bags, were dropped off by the social worker. He left the bags in the living room. He walked in the front of the building and walked out of the back and got in his car and left. And that was the transition. And the person was left there.
Wow.
And these people really didn't have a chance, they had no choice as to who their roommates were or their housemates. And these 8 people, many of them didn't like each other at the institution, and they didn't like each other at this home. And yet they were together 24 hours a day. And I had a chance to see that as a service coordinator or supervisor. And it was really odd because, in America, the successful marriage is really less than 50%. And we expected 8 people to get along that had difficulties communicating. So after a while, it was really evident that we had to do something about that. So that was even before Common Ground started.
That was like in the late 80s.
Late 80s, yeah.
And in the late 80s, in the day, for the daytime, these people would be all go into a van and be driven to a sheltered workshop. And the sheltered workshop consisted of a big room where there were a lot of machinery, and lots of jigs and lots of apparatus so that people could do pieces of industrial work from local companies that would be shipped in, and they would do some of the work there, and then it would be shipped out. At the end of the day, they all go in the van and they all go back to the group home. So the day, and at the time when I was there, there was no, the factory work was there was less and less factory work. It was drying up, and so there really was not much work happening. So what would happen was we'd do simulated work, which was not pleasant.
It was just awful.
It was, just like there'd be like wooden pieces of wood with holes in them, and there'd be these pegs that we'd tell them to put the pegs in the holes, and then we'd take the filled pieces of wood and give them to the next person, say take the pegs out of the holes, and that was supposedly to hone your fine motor skills, so that you could do work when the work would eventually arrive, but it never eventually arrived.
Pre-vocational.
Pre-vocational and simulated work, and there was really no real work happening.
I remember Lou Brown saying, pre means never.
Pre-vocational is really no work, yeah. So that was happening
So that was,
in the late 80s.
Yeah, it was all very hard to watch at the time.
At the time, I was supposed to be trying to find work for people, and I was trying to find work in the community, but it was within a system and within skill sets of people that really didn't have the skills to look at the community and see opportunities and try to help opportunities happen for people, or even have the inclination that would be a good thing to do for people to help them get into the community. So it was a frustrating time. So.
And after we closed the group home, they went to kind of like host families or adult foster care families. There was a matching process of people that would get along, and they take them into their family, and it's kind of a certified situation, so that's very safe, but it was very individualized. So they get their identity back as far as in the home.
They're still going into the shelter.
They created another workshop in the southern part of our area. So then we had 2 workshops.
With 2 directors and 2 vocational coordinators and 2 rehabilitation coordinators and full-time staff in both places. And so the system was not at all able to respond to people's desires and needs to get out in the community.
And then we had an area director that had been there a long time, and he told me, things aren't just going to change, Mark. But the thing that did change was he got promoted, and his wife came and took his place. And it did take someone with just a fresh, viewpoint of how things were being done to be able to make the major change that took place soon after that. And that's really important. I think it's really hard to change things when you have really strong relationships with your staff, and it's hard to let go of all those staff to do the right thing for the people we serve. And I think this was one of those rare things that happened where she came in, looked at things really objectively, and knew she had to do something. And she happened to do it. She made the announcement of this huge change on Christmas Eve.
Well, yeah, she went to a staff meeting, one of our Tempo workshop staff meetings, and there was the usual staff meeting agenda was what to do with timesheets. So-and-so's timesheet's getting in late, and all these mundane things, and she was sitting there and she was planning to announce this new system in January of 1994, but she decided in December of 1993, and she'd said, in hindsight, she said later on that if anybody asked, she was going to tell them. So somebody in this Christmas Eve staff meeting asked, so I hear you have a new system you're going to put in place, and she said, yes, I am. We're going to have a lot of part-time people to work with people individually. Everything's going to be done in the community. People are going to be connected within their communities, and there'll be only 6 full-time people, and it's going to be great. And this person, being smart, said, does that mean we might lose our jobs? And Jane said, yes. Merry Christmas, everybody. So long. And she formally announced it in January, and then we started hiring. 3 of us kept kept the full-time positions from the old way, the old workshop, and all new people were hired.
Obviously created a negative culture, and somewhat cancerous.
A short time. Yeah.
For those 3 months. But it happened fairly quickly because, the announcement came out in January, and then all the staff had the opportunity to go for those new positions, but as Scott said, most of them did not get it. Because it was a different skill set, because you went from, the day and work in the sheltered workshop, which is very different than trying to be a community connector. So most of them, like he said, did not get their position. There
were two direct service staff that made the transition, and they ended fairly quickly once we started there. It was very evident that it wasn't going to work. Initially?
Initially not real well, no. Change is very hard for everyone, and this was a dramatic change. So, in meeting with the families, they weren't all positive about it at all.
There was a change in the way we're providing services,
and
it was a change of staff.
Yeah. So
they developed relationships and trust with the older staff that were there that ended up leaving.
So the first 6 months were a real test, because if it didn't go well, we would have been in trouble. But they did see a change, and they did begin to trust us over time. But it was baby steps, because they'd had this service for so many years the way it was, that we had to earn our credibility, and it took at least 6 months before the phone calls started to die down. In the beginning, it was a little rough, but you kind of have to wait it out and keep your vision focused.
The very first week we started, there was a letter to the editor in the paper saying bad things about you.
Yes, there was. Thank you for bringing that up on tape.
I still have it on my wall. No, I don't.
There was, it's true. So you have to endure that, because when you do know it's the right thing, you have to persevere and press forward. And it isn't easy. So.
But you believe in the values. You believe
Right.
we believe it's the right thing. And you know, the wonderful thing, we've seen the changes, and we've done it so long. Like Mark said, we hardly notice now.
We forget to celebrate now because
Yeah.
it happens regularly. And in the beginning, yeah, there was a lot of celebration of the change, but now, you know, it is kind of a proven way of supporting people. So, you know, oh, of course, it's expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing we weren't looking for well-trained staff. I mean, we were looking for people that already kind of had that internalized respect for people as equals, all people, and because that you can't teach.
It's hard to
People either
train.
have it or they don't, and we learned over time you just got to hire the right people, and then we will work with them to train them any kind of skills or work with them as far as getting to know people. But the right people really were people that were going to come alongside people and assist them and not take care of them, which was a different mindset than there was previous. So the interviews, you know, we did like 60 interviews in 1 month and ended up hiring, you know, all new staff to take over for the old staff. What was it, March 29th?
Well, it was April 1st. April 1st was the end of Tempo Workshop.
Yeah, the end of it.
And then there was the weekend, and then April 4th we started Common Ground.
With new staff. And that, you know, not to say that it was perfect by any means. Some matches we were wrong, and staff left within the first week. But the new way of delivering services in the community took over in 1994. And it was incredibly exciting and chaotic because serving people in an individualized way is much more difficult because things change every day and you got to respond to the changes and people have different schedules. It is a lot easier to provide services in groups and containment. It is easier, but the quality of life is dramatically different.
Yeah, if you look at how as for me, it's like if you look at how you're providing services and you think about that person that's receiving them, and think of it 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and think about what your service provides, and think about where their life would be. That's sort of an indicator of how your services are provided, right? Because if you provide services by teaching skills within 4 walls,
Right.
and you think about that person's life 5 years down the road, where is it? It's in the same 4 walls.
Yeah.
The exciting thing about what we do now is you think about how we provide services, and you think about the person's life 5 years down the road, and there's no telling where they're going to be, right? They could be doing any number of things, and their lives could be going in any different directions, and that, I think, is exciting.
Right.
It's also very chaotic.
Yeah.
You know, within what we do now is, you know, each person's life is very complicated because they're out in the community. They've got commitments, they've got relationships, they've got ideas that they want to do, they've got mistakes they need to correct because they've done a lot of different things, and everybody's life is chaotic. And within our office, there's 20, 30 people that have complicated lives, and we need to support each one of those. So it's very chaotic.
You need to have a structure and a system that's able
That
to
allows
do
that to
that.
happen.
A lot of systems cannot do that because of the way they're arranged. So our system is very, very flat, and we give authority to people so that they can respond to people, and they don't have to go up a chain of command. So that it's a very flat structure with authority given to the people on the ground, so that people can assist people right there in the moment and not call 5 different people. In the beginning, one of the arguments for individualized supports or personalized supports was that it was going to be less expensive. In the end, it really hasn't been because of what you said. The grouping, if you do group and contain, you can have one staff for 6 or 7 people, and it is less expensive.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, I think of someone on my team who...
Scott, I'm talking about the money now.
I'm sorry, no, this is money.
It's money.
This is about money. But think about, the medical issues that people have. I mean, that people used to have, and then now they're medically are healthier people. So if you look at money all around,
big picture, you're right.
They're
much more active.
Seeing people that are healthy, productive
That's
people
true.
in their communities.
Yeah, we assisted a
Funding
person to
wise.
move out of a nursing home, and she
Exactly.
had all kinds of,
Right.
what is that, celiac you got? What is it?
I don't know what you have.
She had these infections, and then we assisted her move into a home, and she's up and about and doing
Yeah.
things, and those
There's a bunch of
medical
folks
issues
like
have gone away.
Yeah.
So the cost to the system as far as medical issues definitely has dramatically been reduced.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as staffing, when I was originally answering this question, the grouping thing, yeah, it can be much more cost effective. And that there's always that kind of a call for that, you know, every now and then.
Well, you have to be vigilant.
Legislators and government want to go back to that. And so we have to constantly be involved with influencing people of power and keeping them on our side and showing the quality of life issues are more important than some of the costs. I don't know if we get any more funny. I mean, I think there's more, over the years, because we now, Common Ground's been doing this for 19 years. I think there is a little more of a tendency to give us a little extra money because of our reputation. We have a really good relationship with our government body in New Hampshire, and I won't say that we get a lot extra, but you know what I mean. There's a little more trust in what we do, and we've been doing it a long time. And the budgets that we propose, because each person has an individualized budget, and so in that plan it says what we're going to do. So it's very personalized and individualized, and they ask us a lot of questions, and we answer those questions. The individual and the family and whoever represents that individual. But in New Hampshire, we pretty much don't talk about the money so much as we do about the supports and services. Sometimes money clouds things for people, and I'm about to lose my words. Excuse me.
You're so emotional about money, Mark. It's amazing. But getting back to...
No, I'm not done yet.
But no, I'm just going back to what you
I just caught
If you think about, but you talked about, we have a good reputation, so the state, gives more money, but also I think we're very, very transparent about how we provide services.
Yeah.
So that's the trust piece, right? That they're always, we invite folks to come in and take a look and really analyze how we provide the supports and how the supports are provided on the ground, how we actually do it, as opposed to looking at paperwork. Because paperwork can be very nice, but in the services themselves can be pretty bad.
Right.
So we have people that, we welcome people to see what we do, offer opinions on how we provide it. So we're very transparent. Because I personally think any system that supports someone, if they're at all secretive or their walls are segregated, it's a dangerous place for people to receive those services, no matter what they are. I think they need to be transparent and open. So
Yeah, we show all of our warts.
so they know if we make a mistake, we're the first to tell them before they find it.
Yeah.
So I think that goes a long way as well.
I mean, for some individuals, we go into it with, there isn't much support, and by being inventive, we fade out of situations. Like in the beginning of Common Ground, there were no job coaches. We had no staffing for assisting people in employment. So what we did was just go right to the employer and say, you're gonna have to hire and assist this person in the workplace
They know the
because
job
we don't
the
have
best.
anybody, and they know the job the best, and it's just natural, and that's the way it should be. So by not having money actually made us come up with very creative ideas on just how to assist people. And we've done that also in assisting people to live in apartments and just being, getting other people involved around the person to kind of fill that void. Because there is a difference as far as eyes-on paid support, but other people can do that. So we have learned that. So that's one way to assist people. But
Yeah, we have one person on my team that we check in on in the morning. He lives on his own, and they just check to make sure, because he needs just a little bit of assistance with his apartment. He needs a little bit of assistance for himself. He has a 40-hour-a-week job, and we want to make sure he's presentable when he goes to work. And he joined, I don't know if you have this here, Elks Club. It's some fraternal club, and he joined that. And now he volunteers down there all the time. I'm not really sure what he does. He volunteers down there all the time, and he offers that they have a big hall, and he offers that hall to our agency if we need a big venue for something now, and if we don't take him up on it, he gets upset. He goes, "You're using my hall. I want you to use my hall for."
He does.
And we then really the amount of support we provide him is just what he needs, just what he needs, not more than what he needs, but just what he needs.
Yeah.
So it works really well.
As you asked the last question, I kind of forget about where people were when we started with them and where they are now. Because our stories, because they're each individual stories, we move from one to the next. I often forget about how someone that came to us with fairly complex needs, and now they are not at that same place. They've really matured and just become kind of just a regular person to us. It's so funny to see things over time.
I mean, that's one of the things I was talking about, is this, there's one woman on my team that has very, very complex medical needs, physical needs, emotional needs, and she lives in her home, and we have someone that supports her there. And at one time, well, there's many stories about her, but at one time she needed a feeding tube, and the medical, she went to the hospital, and the medical people put the feeding tube in, and she was having all kinds of infections and things all the time, and but because the person cared about her, it was a relationship thing. This home provider and her, just they trusted each other and they worked together, and they ended up going to the hospital later, and the doctor said, I think we can take this feeding tube out. This rarely ever happens, but we're going to be able to take this. And she's, she hasn't been in the hospital in 4 years now, whereas she used to go in every few months. But it's just a match. And she owns her own home. Yeah, she owns her own home, and our person supports her in her home. She lives there and supports her in her home. And it's been a great situation. What?
We found that if a person is in the wrong environment, they appear to have complex needs because they're telling us they're behaving loudly, they're behaving loudly, and so one would say they have very complex needs, but we're just not listening. So we have learned to listen and go, they're telling us this is not the right environment for them. Let's assist them to find an environment that matches what they want. And once we find the match, those so-called complex needs fade away, and that's why we forget about them. That's why I kind of went blank. Because I don't think of people that did have complex needs, and now they don't. Because they dissipate as the person finds contentment and they have a life and they're contributing back to society. That their whole life changes, so they go from complex to, that's just Larry, and I don't think about it anymore. So it is a radical change when you see someone in the wrong environment, and then when you assist them to the right environment. It's dramatic. There is a guy named Larry, and that's why I mentioned him. That when I first met him, he was in a kind of facility, educational facility, but it was still a facility. And at the time, he was hitting himself in the face and the knee to his head, and it would make a very jolting sound. And when he would eat, they put this plastic garment on themselves and on him, and the food would just be everywhere, and it looked like some situation you'd see in a science fiction movie. And I remember saying that, I don't know if I can ever serve this guy. I thought, I don't know how to serve him. And when he turns 21, what are we going to do? I said, I might have to resign because I don't know what to do. And I'm pretty idealistic. But sure enough, he did turn 21, and we did assist him to find a home that would match his needs. The first one didn't work out quite as well, and then we tried another one to find another match. And then I think it was the third one that we found was the perfect match for him. And we saw him calm down, no more behavior plan, he doesn't hit himself, and we found him the right day match too, an individual that was like kind of invisible support because they looked like two guys in the community. They acted very similar, and we also checked him out medically to make sure that there wasn't any issue. And there was an issue about his eye, and I don't know if it was ever checked out. He had his eye removed, and we don't know to this day, and we won't know, whether or not the need ahead and all that caused it, or was he telling us he was in pain back when he was doing that. So we will never know what caused it. But now when you see this gentleman, he has a lot of sensory needs, and sometimes he'll fall on the carpet and lie down on the carpet. And instead of telling him, no, that's inappropriate, we just allow that to happen, and then he gets up and he does his thing with us. And he has a sense of humor, like a Three Stooges sense of humor, and he loves to see things bang. He loves to see people fall down.
Fall.
But he's become himself, and now you see him like at Scott's office, and he just sits there very contented, and he does a mail route, and he does a few things where he delivers mail, and just totally different person. You'd never know.
So how's he supported to live in it's his own home, it's not a group home?
It's a family home, so we contract with this family, and this family supports him, and he lives and shares their life in the home. And so they have a contract. We have a contract with this woman that provides the supports for him, and she takes care of his kind of his needs in the house. And if he needs to go home during the day, he can go home.
Anytime.
It's like his home and her home sharing. It's like a shared home. And they go on vacations together. They go all over the place. And it's such a, he goes snowmobiling, and he does all the things everyone else does with the family. So it's a part of the family. And some people don't necessarily want that kind of involvement. And so there are home sharers that, where the person just has a room and comes and goes as he pleases, and they sort of share the house. And where others want to feel like they're a part of the family, and they do become a part of the family, and it's just an extended part of the family. So it's based on the individual.
Yeah, I mean, that's the woman that I was talking about. She owns her own home, and someone lives there with her and helps support her. And she has, like I said, many physical needs, and so the relationship's great. At one time, we tried to staff it with different staff because she needed 24-hour care, and it didn't fit her, didn't fit this person at all, and each person had their own unique take on what they thought she needed. And this one person who was a staff, the relationship just clicked really well. They got along really, really well, and we got rid of the staff, and this one person moved in with her, and it's been an amazing thing. Like I said, both medically and
Quality of life.
her quality of life, and the people that, and with her and with this person's family, really reconnected with her. That didn't happen before, because before it was sort of imposing. You had the staff that was in the home, different staff, and they all had a different take on this person's family and what should happen and what they're about. And this one person who's now the home provider, who supports her in her home, encourages the relationship to happen. They visit the family all the time. They go to all the weddings. They go to the funerals. They go to this person's families, which she never had the opportunity to do before. So she's really connecting with her family, with her sisters, brothers, cousins, that she didn't before. And she also is getting to know and becoming very close with this home provider's families, sisters, brothers, cousins. And so her world is opening up, and
And she's a part of the community.
total part of the
I
community.
hate to admit this, but I was a part of a square dancing group, and she was part of that. What we found is a lot of the people like to stay home. That's part of their makeup. And
they're very giving and willing to.
Selfless. They want to give, and this is a way to give.
Also, you open up your home to scrutiny, because the state needs to certify the home. So the state comes in once a year and looks through the home and sees what it's like. Plus, in the contract they say that we as the agency can drop in at any time as well.
Right.
So the people, very caring. I mean, on the whole, they're very caring, very nurturing people, and willing to, and like to stay home themselves. Don't want to get out and to do work during the day. They'd like to be home, and
It's going to be the right match. It has to be the right match, or else it won't work.
it does, yeah.
And not all of our matches have worked perfectly by any means. So it is trying to find, and with the individuals, we, if they're looking for a place, they visit a number of places, and then we try to take pictures of the places that they were at, so they can choose which one was the best match for them. Because in all the work that we do, I think that's the most critical piece, is the match. For staff, for work, for service coordination, for whatever it is, if it's the right match, things work really well. And if it's not, people will let us know. In the beginning, it was easier to find a good home provider. But, we live in a small community, and the way that we have found the most effective is a current home provider knows someone else. And then they can really explain what it's like, and they share that experience with someone else, and then that person calls us. And then those are the most effective ways. The newspaper ads, you screen through some really odd people that they're in it for the wrong reasons, they're in it for money or whatever, but those people are not the right ones. Or they would just want to take care of people. It's a contractual relationship, so they sign a contract once a year to provide whatever supports are outlined in a person's service agreement. So, and it's based on kind of the amount of assistance they need. So we kind of have to judge that, and then provide the same a fair amount of money to support them in that way.
So how would you say that compares with the cost of, congregate care living, those types of arrangements?
We've found that is more cost effective.
Cost effective, yeah.
And governmental agencies really like it if you're speaking their language, in that it's a fixed cost. There's no overtime for staff. It is, you have in a contract, and this is how much it's going to be for the year, so that you can provide very personalized and individualized supports for someone, and there is a really good support network for that person, and you don't have to have all of these staff with benefits. We get as many people employed as possible. Right now, it's around almost a half of our people are employed, and another half are either doing volunteering or employment. So we really emphasize that as a value, that having a full life means work, that people should be working if they can, and we try to find that match again for the right employment.
One person working in Mount Washington Hotel, a big hotel in our area. Another person's working at a I don't know what you call it, like a Kmart.
And doing the carts, all the carts. Very
Oh no, there's another guy that does all kinds of things there. There's a guy that does the carts.
But he's been doing that for like 12 years.
12 years now, yeah.
And he's getting paid more than some of our direct support workers.
Most of our direct support workers.
They're a little jealous about. Working in supermarkets and Burger King. There's a guy that's been working at a Burger King for a long time.
A couple of people working over at a small hotel out in Bethlehem.
Yeah. And a guy with autism, that when I first met him at age 12, the school had him in a separate house because they didn't know how to contain him. Because he would take off and run downtown to the railroad because he loved the train. And if you didn't let him, he'd hit himself. And now this guy has progressed, because we've known him since he was 12, and now he's working at a Littleton Coin Company. It's a place that sells kind of
collector coins.
Rare coins. And he's very good about detail, because his strength
It's a mail order company.
A good match for the job. And it just radically changed his life, and he's not the same guy we met. So the jobs are all over the place too, because we're in a rural area.
Guy works at Honey Place.
Yeah, yeah, Honey Place, Maple Syrup
Maple
Place.
Syrup Place.
So there aren't any jobs that fit. Well, you know, we don't send anyone to one particular job. We kind of find out what they're naturally gifted at, and then try to find that match, if possible. It's not always possible.
We had one person who used to work in our sheltered workshop. This woman used to work in our sheltered workshop, and she was really good at collating paper and putting paper into envelopes and putting stamps on things. And she was really good at that. But as I said before, that work dried up in the sheltered workshop. And we've realized that supporting people within a sheltered environment is really detrimental to people's lives. So we shut that down, and we asked this woman, you know, what kind of things do you want to do? You know, now the sky's the limit, you can do whatever. And she said, I don't know why I can't do what I was doing in the sheltered workshop. I was good at it, and now it's gone. So our employment guy said, you know, you're right. And through a lot of hard work, she was able to get her own, she started her own business on Main Street in the town of Littleton, New Hampshire. She a viable business, and companies would contract with her to do that work, and it was her own business, and it was a successful business, and she was part of the local business association. She knew all the shopkeepers in town, and she in Littleton once every year or twice a year there was the sidewalk sale, so all of the businesses would sell their wares on the sidewalk, so people walk up and down Main Street, and she did the same with her business, and so she was a part of the Littleton community, and it was amazing to see. And she died, and you know, not at work. But what, you know, sort of, you know, if you think about what kind of outcomes, you know, what your support outcomes, what are your outcomes? Well, this outcome was in the funeral. It was the business owners. It was the people in Littleton that spoke about her. The local clergy spoke about her. The people with disabilities came and spoke about her, and people that knew her through her business world spoke about her. And it was a celebration of a business owner in Littleton. It was not about someone with a disability who received services from an agency. It was, you know, and that was like, so that's sort of what the outcomes should be, you know. And you see the state looks at our services, and they look at the paper, and they look at the charts, and making sure that all of the signatures are
meeting
there.
their goals. But
Yeah, are they achieving their goals? Well, you know, the goal is, you know, what was your life? And the life was, you know, was a viable, contributing member of her community. And there was a empty spot on Main Street after she died. You know, because she was a vital person.
right, and when she was in the workshop, no one knew her.
She was just one of the people behind those walls. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to have that be an outcome, but it really showed us, you know, are we assisting people in the right way? And that was, you know, kind of proof that it was.
It was neat.
She was
Mark
living a full life.
officiated the funeral, and
Yeah.
my daughters and I sang at the funeral, and other people spoke at the funeral, and it was a really amazing. It was, and I didn't think that was going to happen when we went to the funeral. I wondered, you know, I didn't really think. And then I looked around and I went, this is a big shot in the town. This was one of the big people in town that people are celebrating here. And it was like, wow, that was
and they just referred to her as Patty. I mean, it wasn't.
you know. I always have one that I say is that if you're gonna be individualizing supports, don't try to hinder the chaos that will happen, because it will be chaotic, you know, that and basically you should be embracing the chaos, because you're supporting all of these lives, and there's going to be inevitable chaos, and if you try to control it, you're controlling the people, because our services are supporting people. So if you're controlling the chaos, it's going to be controlling people, and it's going to be hindering the supports that could possibly help people blossom into and meet new people and becoming members of their community and citizens. So understand that there's going to be chaos and don't try to hinder it. You have to control. You have to figure out a system that can manage it, not control. Don't control it. Manage the chaos. Don't control the chaos.
Spontaneously, I think someone told us.
Someone say, instead of saying chaos, call it spontaneity. But I think it's chaos. It's chaos because it's going to be. Because people change
like
their
the word chaos.
They didn't like the word chaos. It's my word. I love chaos.
I would emphasize that the foundation before any change takes place is to have a strong value based. That any transformation before it does anything should have an agreement amongst themselves about what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, and that it has to be to assist people that live a full life, and then build up from there, and then analyze their own system and analyze the bigger system, and how can we get those structures in place to fulfill what we want to do as far as our values. And then they get all those people on your side. I mean, you need to have all these different stakeholders come alongside you, because it can't just be about a person wanting to do something. You do need to get the families and the people served and the governmental people, the people of power, and administration. All these people have to come along with you as part of the movement. So I think that's really important, that you get those people involved, because that's what we did, and it's really effective when everybody's together. But it takes a lot of work to get people to see it the same way. But it can be done. And it does tend to happen in pockets. It doesn't. It's hard to do in a large scale, and I think that's why you don't see it on a large scale, because I think people really want very medical-based outcomes, and to do this quality of life changes, it's really hard to kind of quantify, and it's difficult to measure the way you would a person in the hospital getting better. It's different. It's very different.
It's also, I mean, in advocating for dollars, in the governmental side, if they have data, they can state there's 17% more people do such and such. We need so much more money. But like I was saying, our outcomes are, what was a person's life? What was that? Mm-hmm. And it's not measurable. And so how can a politician or a government official say that person's life is better? And so they like to see hard data so they can easily say, okay, 38% improvement will give 38% more money. Yeah. And it's easy to state that within.
We invite government up.
Constantly invite those folks up, yeah. Constantly invite those folks up.
To remind them that it can be done, and it is a quality of life issue. And then also, if someone were to start it, I think they should have someone that's done it before come alongside them to help them, and to say, no, it's okay, you're going to get through this period, and it is going to be better. Because in the beginning there's some naysayers, and you really have to work through that stage of people not thinking it's going to work, and then they'll see the outcome eventually. But you got to get through it, and having someone in your corner to speak to those people that don't see it the same way as you do, I think is important. Organizations have called us that are going through it, and we've gone and visited with different organizations to speak to families, to say, no, this happened, and this is going to be the outcome eventually. And that's effective, because it's hard other than just telling stories.
Well, you have to have values that are clearly articulated, and then everyone knows the values, and everybody knows them deep down, because and so then your decisions are based upon that deep down value base, because you're out there and like I said, just going to be managing all the chaos that happens. And I tell my staff that don't worry about making a mistake as long as I see that your decision was based on our core values. So you're shooting for this, and you made this decision and it didn't work. Don't worry about it. You were still shooting for the for the right thing. But if I see someone making a decision that's totally against of what our values are, that's a problem. So you had to. Everyone needs to know the values and the mission and the truth deep down, and then you work together, and it's going to be fine.
And you do need a strong leader to keep it going.
Well, that's
Yeah.
to be able to state those values clearly and articulately, and everyone
Right.
believes that. And
Michael Kendrick talks about that a lot, is the leadership, and to be an effective leader, you have to have followers, and so you make sure you build in that support behind you.
Every human being deserves and has the fundamental right to be a part of their communities, be a contributing member to their communities, and that each person has the fundamental right to be respected and to have a say in what their life is going to be. Whether you can articulate that verbally or whether you can't articulate that verbally, everybody has a right to have a say in what and have a direction and choose that direction for their life that's important to them, and then we are supposed to support that life. And
that life doesn't mean that it's going to be a life of
No.
just taking care of that life. That life is going to be like ours, that there'll be opportunities to make mistakes and fail and lose their jobs, and like us, and that's how we learn, and that's how people learn. So,
yeah, everybody has the right to live a full life. Everybody needs to feel that someone cares about them. Everybody has the fundamental right to be a part of their communities. And we also say that, as a professional, you need to understand that how you're treating the person you're supporting directly impacts on how the community treats the person you're supporting. Because the community at large will be looking at, what is this? And if a person's not respected, the community is going to be less apt to respect that person that's not being respected by a so-called professional. So, that's the kind of understanding of our role as a professional. But, really, how would we want to be treated how would we want to be supported?
Yeah, we build programs around people. We don't place people into programs. So it's all very simple when you think about it. It's just
No, it is simple.
Yeah. Our experience has been that people that have friends are the safest people in the world. People that are in kind of, like Scott mentioned earlier, kind of a protected environment.
I think
Those
that's
are the people
dangerous.
that are the least safe, and that's been
Why
proven.
is that?
Because there's no accountability at all in those environments. Those environments are somewhat protected, and historically bad things have happened in locked wards and facilities because they're insular, and there's no natural flow of people in and out that keep people safe. So our experience has been that since people are out and about and have a life and have people that check on them, those are the safer people.
There was a guy who was part of the group home, and when the group home was disbanded, he and this one person ended up having a really nice relationship, and he became the home provider for this person. And this person had a lot of behaviors. He would hit people. He'd run. He'd throw stuff. He'd lock himself in the car, in the van, and a lot of behaviors. And I remember, and he was on my team, and I remember talking to the home provider, and he goes, I gotta say, yesterday we went to the store, and my guy he wasn't in a really good mood, and we were grocery shopping, and he started getting a little upset, and I felt so bad because we've had so many years, all those behaviors that he used to exhibit have disappeared, but he exhibited them again, and he goes, I feel so bad about it, and I had to leave. I had to leave with him, and we started walking out of the store, and I realized I still had my carriage, and I hadn't bought the groceries yet, and so I spun around, and I went back, and one of the checkout people was at the door, and I pushed the cart to them, and I said, I'm real sorry, and he goes, he's having a bad day. It's fine. It was no big deal. because they know each other. They knew each other. So what was a quote a behavior when he was in a group home was just he had a bad day like we all do, and that person ended up checking out the groceries for him and ran the groceries to the car for them to take off. So it was he's a person who's known, and he's a person who is safe because he's known. He's safe because he's known. The community knew him,
Right.
which was neat.
That is a very real issue that many families ask us about. Is it safe? And the difficulty of any kind of program is you cannot guarantee safety. Well, you can talk to them about they will have relationships with people, and relationships, genuine relationships, to protect people. But no program, and particularly the ones that are segregated, congregated, can protect people safely. It's just hidden more.
In the United States anyway, I think professionals like us 50, 60 years ago said, your loved one has a disability. The best thing for your loved one is to be in this institutional setting. This person really doesn't have the capacity to be a part of the community. And this is us talking 50, 60 years ago. So people believed us. And so there were these big institutions, and the community at large
We've lost our credibility.
suffered. The community at large suffered because all of humanity wasn't part of the community. There was a percentage that was separated from. And now people like us are saying, let's be a part. And some people are saying, wait, that doesn't fit right, because wasn't it you 50 years ago that said you're supposed to be separate from? And now, I mean, still the residual effects of that grouping and of that institutional setting is that it's more cost effective. You need professionals. People with disabilities need professionals. How are we going to hire a lot of professionals? Maybe if we group a bunch of people together and you have a few professionals, there's still that mentality that it takes a professional, which is wrong.
Yeah, I am surprised though that it is the way it is still. 19 years ago when we started Common Ground, I thought by now, certainly by now, that it would be widespread. So I am kind of shocked that 19 years later we're still talking about this, because it should be commonplace. It shouldn't be like it is now. I just can't believe it. When we go and speak in areas and this very large congregated, segregated grouping, I can't believe it. Because it just makes it's just common sense to serve people in a very individualized way.
It's common sense for us, but I think people still have the fallacy that these folks are vulnerable and need to be protected.
I know.
And then they need professionals to be able to take care of the symptoms or the behaviors, and don't understand that behaviors are.
But I just thought the stories, coming
know.
from agencies that have supported people in a very personalized, individualized way, would get around,
Right.
and that change would happen on a larger scale. It's been so long.
Yeah.
I am, kind of surprised that.
I have to say that the communities that we work in, are very. It's very
Like
open
our
and
staff don't know anything else.
They don't know anything
So when we
else.
tell stories of other places, they go, "What? That doesn't make any sense."
So they're shocked, yeah, and and hear stories of community members not wanting people to be a part. Our staff are like, what? Because they don't find that where we are, because people are out and about, and they're part of their community. So
and it does say something about the people we serve are devalued, because they're still stuck in institutions in the United States, throughout the country. All those should be shut down by now. It just doesn't make sense. If it was a different group of people, other than people that cannot vote in many of our states,
I think that's a lot of it too.
if they could vote, I think things would change.
Yeah.